He commanded an empire built on blood and silence, but he couldn't get his own son to speak a single word. Andy Park sat rigid in his custom-tailored suit, watching his 9-year-old son, Jackie, rock back and forth in the leather booth of Hanul. The boy's untouched $300 Wagyu beef grew cold while other diners cast nervous glances their way, not judgment, but fear. They recognized the tattoos peeking from Andy's collar, dragons and tigers crawling up his neck in traditional Korean ink. They knew who he was. Seoul's most dangerous man. But tonight, in this opulent dining room, his son was making him look weak. Andy's jaw clenched with each whispered word, each frightened stare. Jackie's hands were clamped over his ears, his small body trembling from sensory overload. 2 years without speaking. 2 years of specialists who took Andy's money but couldn't reach his child. "Jackie, please," Andy muttered in Korean, his voice tight with barely controlled rage. "People are watching. You're making me look weak." The words hung bitter and useless. Jackie rocked harder, unreachable. But then something extraordinary happened. A black waitress approached their table with movements so calm they could quiet storms. Without asking permission, she knelt beside Jackie's chair and began humming a soft melody, a traditional Korean lullaby that shouldn't have sounded so natural in her voice. She matched the exact rhythm of Jackie's rocking. Made the spoon dance in circular patterns. Created a bubble of safety around him that expensive specialists never could. Within 3 minutes, the boy who hadn't eaten a full meal in weeks was taking food from her hands. What happens next will change everything. Subscribe now so you don't miss the next story. The blood came up easier than expected. Andy watched the 2 men work, their surgical gloves squeaking against mahogany as they scrubbed in circular motions. Morning sunlight poured through floor-to-ceiling windows, 48 floors above Seoul, turning the cleaning solution pink. Business meetings always left a mess. His empire stretched across the city like a shadow network, drug pipelines running through Itaewon, protection rackets bleeding restaurant owners dry, money flowing through laundromats and convenience stores like water finding cracks. But the real genius was the charities. Who questioned foundations that fed homeless children? Authorities trusted them. Boards were easy to infiltrate. Money disappeared into bureaucratic mazes, and everyone looked the other way because the cause was noble. His phone buzzed. Jackie's school. "Mr. Kong, he's locked himself in the storage closet again. He's hitting his head against the wall. We can't." Andy hung up. The men were still scrubbing. Across Seoul, in a studio apartment where mold crept up the corners, Zaraya folded her PhD certificate and buried it beneath tampons and face cream. Places people never looked. She caught her reflection in the cracked mirror. When had she stopped recognizing herself? 2 years ago, she'd stood before 15 children in a bright classroom, watching them trace letters in the air, rock to rhythms only they could hear. "They're not broken," she'd told parents who wept with relief. "They're just experiencing the world differently." The Seoul Special Needs Alliance had grown to 200 children. International recognition. Programs replicated across Asia. Then the funding vanished overnight. Accounts frozen. Her reputation shredded by accusations she still didn't understand. Now she tied a Hanul apron, caught the 6:47 bus, and became invisible. Jackie sat in the bulletproof Mercedes, tracing patterns on tinted windows. The driver knew not to speak. At home, 12 rooms stood empty. Jackie knew only his bedroom, blackout curtains, sound-dampening panels, thermostat locked at 68 degrees. Min Young's voice still echoed through the mansion sometimes. "I didn't sign up for a broken child." She'd left 2 years ago. Taken everything except Jackie. Andy stood at his window, watching the city pulse below. He controlled shipments, politicians, entire districts. Everything that mattered. Except the one thing that mattered most. 3 days. 3 separate lives, moving through Soul's veins like blood cells, unaware they were about to collide in the same desperate heart. Zariah would catch that bus. Jackie would trace those patterns. Andy would make one more phone call. And nothing would ever be the same. The bodyguards formed a perimeter before Andy's feet touched pavement. Hanol's entrance, corner booth, clear sight lines to both exits. Routine perfected over 3 years of failed dinner attempts. Jackie's hand found the car door, fingernails already digging crescents into his palm. The restaurant's fluorescent lights bled through tinted windows, too bright, too sharp, 1,000 tiny knives. Inside, diners' conversations died mid-sentence. Forks froze. A child whispered something, her mother's hand clamped over her mouth. Andy had bought silence before, but fear worked faster. The young Korean server approached without eye contact, took their order in a voice barely above a whisper. Wagyu for Andy. Plain white rice for Jackie. When the food arrived, Jackie's rocking intensified. Hands over ears. The low moan building in his throat that meant they had minutes before the screaming started. Jackie, please. Andy's voice came out harder than intended. People are watching. The words hung between them, bitter and useless. They were always watching. Then she appeared. Andy didn't see her approach, his focus had narrowed to his son's distress, calculating exit strategies, damage control. But suddenly she was there, kneeling at eye level, movements fluid and non-threatening, creating a pocket of calm in the chaos. The posture was submissive, deferential. Something in Andy's predatory instincts recognized the tactical brilliance. She began humming. Bandal, the half-moon lullaby, but in a minor key, slowed tempo. Matching the exact rhythm of Jackie's rocking. Then she picked up the spoon. Moved it in slow, circular patterns. The same patterns Jackie traced on every window, every surface, every moment of every day. She made the food dance. Turned dinner into a quiet ballet only his son could see. Jackie's eyes found hers. She didn't flinch, didn't demand, didn't look away. Just held his gaze with the patience of someone who understood that eye contact was a gift, not a requirement. He ate. One bite. Another. Half the bowl, more than he'd eaten in weeks. Andy's heart pounded in a way it hadn't since his first kill. His bodyguards exchanged glances. They'd watched him hire the best specialists, fly in experts from 3 continents. This woman did in 3 minutes what no one else could do in 3 years. She rose without ruffling Jackie's hair or touching his shoulder, respecting boundaries most people didn't know existed. The grace of someone whose knees had memorized that motion through countless repetitions. Thank you. The English words felt foreign in his mouth. Her response came in perfect Korean, American accent threading through each syllable. He's not difficult. He's just speaking a language most people haven't learned yet. She disappeared back into the kitchen. Miho. Andy's voice cut through the ambient noise. Find out everything about her. Everything. Jackie picked at the rice with his fingers, arranging grains in patterns. Not eating anymore, but calm. Present. Something shifted in Andy's chest. A crack in the armor. A fissure that let in light and air and something dangerously close to hope. And hope, in his world, was the most dangerous thing of all. Chapter 3. The call came 3 hours before service. Hanol's maitre d' listened, phone pressed tight to his ear, then found Zariah in the break room microwaving yesterday's rice. Table 12. The park party. They asked for you specifically. She'd searched Andy Park the night she got home. Articles sprawled across her phone screen until 3 a.m., Park Enterprises, money laundering allegations, drug trafficking networks, organized crime. The kind of man her mother had warned her about continents away and decades ago. But she'd also seen his face when Jackie ate. Seen the crack in his armor. The desperate hope of a father watching his child do something impossible. Tell him I'll be right there. The second Tuesday, Andy brought only 2 bodyguards, positioned discreetly near the bar. He'd made an effort. Jackie was already rocking when she approached, but she knelt, hummed, matched his patterns. He ate again. By week 3, she was teaching. Lower your voice when you talk to him. Her words came gentle but firm. You're used to commanding. He needs inviting. When you speak like you're giving orders, it overwhelms him. Try softer, like you're sharing a secret. Week 4, approach from the side, not head-on. Frontal feels threatening, too direct, too confrontational. Let him see you in his peripheral vision first. Andy practiced right there. Seoul's most feared mob boss taking instructions from a waitress. But it worked, Jackie didn't flinch. Week 5 brought blocks. Jackie stacked them in spiraling patterns while Andy tried to correct, straighten, control. Match his patterns, Zariah said. He's making something that makes sense to him. What if you joined his structure instead of forcing yours? Andy's hands moved awkwardly, stiffly, stacking blocks in Jackie's design. Not correcting. Participating. Jackie's face lit up in a way Andy had rarely seen. Week 6, she pushed harder. Let him control the pace. You're used to dominating every situation. With Jackie, you need to surrender that. I don't surrender. His voice came out hard, automatic. Then you'll keep losing him. The words hung between them, sharp enough to cut. Andy's jaw clenched. For a moment, she saw violence surface in his eyes, the man who'd left blood on mahogany floors. But then he looked at Jackie, humming softly to himself. Something cracked further. Show me how to surrender, Andy said quietly. Week 8 changed everything. Jackie saw Zariah approach and smiled. Reached for her hand. As she knelt with his dinner, he whispered, Zariah Yoma. The restaurant went quiet. Or felt that way. Zariah's eyes burned with tears she couldn't shed in front of customers. Andy stared at his son, face warring between pride and grief that looked like drowning. Jackie never called Minyoung Yoma with that warmth. That night, Mr. Cho called Zariah to his office. I have connections. Business relationships requiring careful balance. He didn't say, connections to rival organizations. When people like him form attachments, it creates complications. The first paparazzi photo hit a gossip blog before she left, Notorious Park spotted at Hanul with son. Who is mysterious server? Zariah's stomach churned walking out. But Jackie called her Yoma. Andy was learning to approach from the side, lower his voice, surrender control. For the first time in 4 years, her expertise mattered again. She didn't see the black sedan following her home. Didn't notice the camera flash from across the street. Didn't know that by morning, her face would be on 3 rival bosses' desks with a single question written underneath. Who is she to him? 10 years ago, Andy was 24, standing in a Songbukdong basement while his father watched. Harder. Dae-young's voice never rose. Never needed to. He needs to understand. They all need to understand. Andy's knuckles split against the man's jaw. Blood mixed, his and the victim's, painting the concrete floor in abstract patterns. The man had stolen from the organization. Mistakes like that required clarity. His father's lesson had been clear since childhood: emotion is weakness. Control is survival. Love will get you killed faster than any bullet. The man on the floor stopped moving. Dae-young nodded, satisfied. Good. You're ready. Andy didn't ask ready for what. Questions were weakness too. He washed blood from his hands and stepped into the role carved for him since birth. 6 years later, the empire had evolved. Dae-young relied on brutality alone, but Andy understood modern crime required modern infrastructure. Drug trafficking through Busan ports. Protection rackets in nightclub districts. Money laundering through tech startups, so much capital flowing, investors willing to look away for returns. But charities worked even better. Foundations, non-profits, grant-funded programs, his financial advisor explained. Vulnerable to takeover. Trusted by authorities. Nobody questions where charitable donations really go. Andy reviewed the list: youth programs, homeless shelters, educational foundations. Among them, Seoul Special Needs Alliance. He didn't read the details, didn't care about missions or people served. Just numbers. Cash flow projections. Risk assessments. Take them. All of them. His father would be proud. The smartest criminals hide in plain sight, use society's goodwill as camouflage. 8 years ago, on the 3rd floor of a building near Gangnam Station, Zaraya stood before 15 children. They're not broken, she told her assistant Ji-won. Not problems to solve. Just children who experience the world differently than we do. Seoul Special Needs Alliance grew to 200 children within 3 years. Programs other countries wanted to replicate. Sensory integration meeting Korean family dynamics. Individualized plans respecting rather than correcting. Parent education centering dignity instead of normalization. She'd built a sanctuary, a place where different minds weren't deficits to fix, but gifts to unwrap. Among her students, wealthy Gangnam families and working-class families from Sangbuk-dong. She never turned anyone away. Money shouldn't determine which children got to thrive. Irony brewing in the background, some of those Sangbuk-dong families lived in territory controlled by rising mobster Andy Park. Their worlds existed in the same city but different universes. Until collision. 4 years ago, the Seoul Metropolitan Government Anti-Corruption Task Force finished an 18-month investigation. They traced suspicious money flows through several non-profits, including Seoul Special Needs Alliance. No proof the directors were involved. No evidence Zaraya knew grants had mixed with laundered proceeds. But contamination was enough. Government grants suspended. Private donors withdrew. Banks froze accounts. The alliance shut down within 3 months. Zaraya's last day, standing in an empty classroom, boxes of files stacked against walls. 200 children lost services overnight. Families left scrambling for alternatives that didn't exist or couldn't afford. Visa status suddenly complicated, tied to employment, 90 days to find new work or leave. 8 years building a life in Seoul. 8 years loving the city's children, learning its streets, becoming part of its fabric. Being erased. Victim of a system she never knew she was entangled with. 2 years ago, Andy sat across from Min Young in their mansion dining room. He's been diagnosed. Autism spectrum disorder. Severe. He'll need intensive support, special programs. Andy sat very still, the way he sat before violence. Processing, his son, his only child, broken. Min Young looked at Jackie playing in the corner, arranging toy cars in patterns only he understood. Looked at him the way Andy's father looked at him when he cried over his mother's death. Disgust thinly veiled as disappointment. I didn't sign up for this. I didn't marry you to raise a damaged child. I'm leaving. 3 months later, divorce papers filed from LA, custody freely relinquished. She chose the promise of a perfect life over the reality of a beautiful, complex child she'd given birth to. Andy tried everything. Private specialists. Therapies that left Jackie drowsy but no more connected. Research programs. Experts flown in from Tokyo, Singapore, anywhere promising hope. But Seoul's best programs had waiting lists years long. Affordable programs didn't exist, had shut down due to funding issues and corruption investigations. He never connected the dots. Never realized the charity fraud his organization perfected years ago had destroyed the infrastructure his son needed. While Andy signed papers to launder money through Seoul Special Needs Alliance, Zariah was in that building helping children just like Jackie. While his criminal enterprise mixed blood money with grants, she developed programs that could have changed his son's life. He destroyed what he needed while building what he thought would protect him. Present day. Andy sat in Hanul, watching Zariah disappear into the kitchen after feeding Jackie. Feeling the first tremors of understanding without yet knowing what he was understanding. Armor cracking without knowing what would pour through the fissure. Jackie was calm. Eating. For the first time in memory, not invisible pain. Somewhere in that kitchen, a woman who'd lost everything she'd built, tying her apron, returning to serve customers who'd never know what she'd once been capable of. Who'd never know her expertise had just saved the child whose father's organization destroyed her life's work. The past and present had collided in a moment of impossible gentleness. But neither of them knew yet. Neither understood that the woman who'd just performed a miracle was the same woman Andy's empire had erased. That the boy who'd finally found peace was the son of the man who destroyed her sanctuary. The truth would come later. In a courtroom. In front of cameras and judges and the weight of public judgment. But first, Andy would make one more decision. One that would set everything in motion, seal both their fates, and prove his father right about one thing. Love would get you killed faster than any bullet. The headline appeared Thursday morning, Mafia Boss's Waitress Mystery, Park's Secret Family. The photo was grainy but unmistakable, Andy and Jackie leaving Hanul, Zariah holding the door, her hand briefly on Jackie's shoulder. The angle made it look intimate. Familial. Scandalous. By afternoon, Korean media picked it up. The story spread like fire through dry grass. Headlines multiplied, Seoul's most notorious gangster, autistic son, Black Waitress who has unusual influence. Foreign influence in Park crime family. Comment sections were worse. Korean nationalism mixed with anti-black rhetoric, a toxic storm of speculation and hatred. Some called Zariah a gold digger. Others called her worse. The few voices defending her drowned in the majority's rage. Zariah stopped reading comments but couldn't escape the stares at work. Other servers avoided her in the break room. Customers requested different sections. Mr. Cho called her to his office again. "I'm sorry. But I need you to take some time off. Just until this blows over. Unpaid time off. I don't have a choice. The attention is affecting business. Investors are concerned about the restaurant's reputation. I understand." Her voice stayed even, professional, though she was already calculating how long her savings would last. She didn't understand. But understanding wasn't required for survival. Paparazzi camped outside her apartment. She used the fire escape to avoid them. Her phone rang constantly, interview requests mixed with death threats. Someone posted her address on a forum. Racist graffiti appeared on her door twice. Women confronted her at the bus stop, calling her things in Korean she pretended not to understand while her hands shook. Then immigration authorities called. Not a letter, a direct phone call requesting she come to their office immediately to clarify questions about her visa status. The timing was too convenient. Someone with power had decided a black woman with precarious immigration status was an easy target to eliminate. Meanwhile, Andy's Lieutenant Young-soo requested a meeting. "Boss, I need to speak plainly." "Then speak." "She's making you soft. The men are talking." saying you've lost your edge. That kidnapping attempt happened because rivals think you're vulnerable now. They see photos of you with a waitress and child, think the Park empire is weakening. Andy's voice went cold. 3 men are in the hospital. That's not weak. 3 men got close enough to try. That's the problem. Your father would never have allowed personal attachments to become public vulnerabilities. Andy stood slowly. My father died alone in a hospital bed because everyone was too afraid of him to sit with him. Is that the legacy you're suggesting I follow? Young-Soo's jaw tightened. I'm suggesting you remember what world we live in. Gentleness is a luxury men like us can't afford. That night, Andy texted Zaraya. Different restaurant in Gangnam, private room. She hesitated, professional boundaries already blurring, already causing complications she couldn't afford. But Jackie needed consistency. She agreed. Jackie ran to her when she arrived, actually ran, something he rarely did in public, and wrapped his arms around her waist. Zaraya. His voice was clearer now, stronger. 3 months of consistent connection had worked small miracles. Andy watched with an expression between gratitude and grief and longing so deep it pulled at the air around him. Leaving through the back entrance to avoid photographers, they entered the parking garage. 3 men materialized from the shadows. They moved with practiced coordination, professionals, not random muggers. 1 went for Jackie while 2 blocked Andy's bodyguards. Zaraya's training kicked in before fear. She pulled Jackie behind her, body becoming a shield, mind calculating exits. But Andy moved faster. The transformation was instant and absolute. The man who'd been learning to be gentle became something else entirely. A predator unleashed. A weapon deployed. He broke the first man's arm with a movement too fast to follow. The second man pulled a knife. Andy disarmed him, used the blade to open a gash across his face that would scar forever. The third man reached for Jackie. Andy's response was savage. Not just stopping the threat, obliterating it. The man on the ground, Andy's knee on his throat, fist coming down again and again. A wet, terrible rhythm. Boss. Boss, he's down. Miho grabbed Andy's shoulder. Andy stopped, chest heaving, knuckles split and bloody. Blood spattered his expensive suit. He looked up, eyes finding Zaraya's. For a moment she saw past the violence to the terror underneath. Terror that they'd almost taken his son, that he'd almost lost the one thing his empire couldn't replace. Then he saw her expression. Zaraya stood holding Jackie, his face buried in her shoulder, hands over his ears against the sounds of violence. She stared at Andy with something between horror and recognition. This was who he really was. Not a father learning to be gentle, but this, a creature built from violence. A man whose hands dealt death as easily as they reached for his son. For a week afterward, she had nightmares where Andy's hands moved from breaking bones to reaching for Jackie. Violence and tenderness blurred until she couldn't tell them apart. The photos went viral. Park's brutal response to kidnapping attempt, is anyone safe? Then Min-young struck. She'd been living a perfect life in LA for 2 years. Suddenly she saw opportunity in the chaos. Her lawyer filed emergency custody papers in Seoul Family Court. The filing cited Andy's criminal lifestyle, the kidnapping attempt, and most damningly, inappropriate relationship with service staff being used as unpaid childcare. It painted Zaraya as either a victim being exploited or a gold digger targeting a vulnerable single father. Dozens of paparazzi photos compiled over months. Zaraya's hand on Jackie's shoulder. Andy watching her with his son. The 3 leaving restaurants together like a family. The papers arrived Wednesday morning. Andy sat in his office where blood had been cleaned from the floor months ago, reading through the filing. We can fight this, Miho said. Our lawyers are better than hers. The judge will see she abandoned Jackie. Andy's voice came out quiet. She abandoned a diagnosed child. I exposed him to a kidnapping attempt. I'm documented organized crime. She's a concerned mother trying to protect her son from a dangerous environment. He threw the papers across his desk. She's going to win. Outside his windows, Seoul sprawled in darkness, full of people who lived simpler lives. People who didn't have to choose between being gentle with their children and surviving in a world built on violence. His phone buzzed. A message from Zariah. Jackie asked about you today. He wanted to know when he could see Zariah Yoma again. Andy stared at the message for a long time. Then looked at the custody papers, at photos of his son looking happier than he'd been in years, at the accusation that he was unfit, unstable, dangerous. The storm had gathered. The battle lines were drawn. And Andy Park, who'd never surrendered to anyone, was about to learn what it meant to lose everything that mattered. The call came from an unknown number, but Zariah answered because she'd been waiting for immigration authorities. Instead, Miss Mitchell, this is Dr. Kim, Jackie's specialist. Jackie has regressed significantly in the past week. He's stopped eating again. He's self-harming, banging his head, hitting himself. Mr. Park is beside himself. I know you're dealing with a lot right now, but if there's anything you can do. Zariah stared at her phone until the words blurred. Jackie was hurting. Sliding back into that unreachable place where the world was too loud, too bright, too much. She was hiding in her apartment while he suffered. The connection that had helped him had been severed by legal strategy and public opinion. She looked around her studio apartment, all 200 square feet of everything she'd managed to build in 4 years. The drawer where her PhD certificate stayed hidden. The person she'd become, small, silent, erased. Something inside her broke. Or maybe it was something that finally refused to stay broken. She picked up her phone and texted Andy, "Where can we meet?" The cafe in Itaewon was diverse enough that a black woman and Korean man drew fewer stares. Andy arrived with only Miho, who waited outside. He looked terrible, hadn't shaved in days, expensive suit wrinkled. The controlled violence usually defining him had been replaced by something raw and desperate. Jackie stopped eating, Andy said without preamble. He's hurting himself. The specialists can't reach him. I can't reach him. His hands shook slightly on the table. He asks for you every day. Zariah Yoma. And I don't know what to tell him. Zariah wrapped her hands around her coffee cup. Your lawyers think I'm the problem. That I'm making you look unstable. My lawyers think control and image matter more than actually being a father. Maybe they're right. Maybe I need to distance myself to win custody. Maybe. Andy leaned forward. I've spent my whole life building distance. Building walls. Controlling everything through fear and violence. His voice cracked. And it got me an empire I don't care about and a son I couldn't reach. You taught me how to tear those walls down. How to surrender control. How to actually see him. How to love him in a way he can feel. And now that's being used against you. Let it be used. I don't care what the tabloids say or what the lawyers think or what it costs me. I care about Jackie. And Jackie needs you. It's not that simple. Zariah's voice broke. Immigration is questioning my visa. I'm getting death threats. People have posted my address online. I'm terrified, Andy. And I don't know if I'm strong enough for what you're asking. I'm not asking you to be strong. I'm asking you to be there. For him. For us. Andy paused. The custody hearing is in 3 days. My lawyers want me to distance myself from you. But Min Young's lawyers are going to destroy me anyway. They'll paint me as an unfit father because they're not wrong. I am dangerous. I have exposed Jackie to violence. My world is exactly as unstable as they'll claim. So what are you saying? I'm saying the only defense I have is the truth. That I'm trying to change. That I'm learning to be the father Jackie needs. And you're the one teaching me. That maybe love and connection matter more than image and control. He met her eyes. I need you to testify. I need you to tell them who you really are. What you really know. Why Jackie calls you Yilma. Zariah's phone sat on the table between them. She'd been avoiding this, but she pulled it out. Opened her browser. Searched, Park Enterprises Charity Fraud Soul. Articles from 4 years ago loaded. Her hands began to shake. Anti-Corruption Task Force traced money laundering through non-profits, including. She looked up at Andy, and he saw something change in her expression. Horror. Recognition. Connection clicking into place. What was the name of your organization's money laundering operation 4 years ago? Her voice came out very quiet. The charities you used as fronts? Andy's dread built slowly. We had a financial advisor who handled that. There was a network of small nonprofits. Grant-funded. They were perfect for, he stopped, watching her face. For what? For mixing blood money with legitimate grants until no one could tell which was which? What was the name of your program? Andy's voice barely reached audible. Soul Special Needs Alliance. The silence between them was vast and terrible. All the pieces falling into place. My organization laundered money through your program. Andy's voice came out hollow. We destroyed your funding. Zariah's words came quiet, but each one was a blade. You destroyed my life's work. You used a charity that helped 200 children as a front for your criminal empire. And when it collapsed, those children lost everything. I lost everything. I didn't know. I signed papers. I didn't read what they were for. I didn't. You didn't care because they were just numbers to you. Just covers. Just tools for your empire. She stood up, chair scraping loud against the floor. And now you want me to help you? To testify for you? To save your custody case? When your organization destroyed the very programs your son needed? Andy stood too, voice raw. Yes. I'm asking you to help me even though I don't deserve it. Even though my empire destroyed yours. Because Jackie deserves it. He deserves to have someone who sees him truly. Someone who knows how to reach him. And that's you. If I do this. If I testify. They'll destroy me completely. Any chance of rebuilding my career, of staying in Korea, of having any kind of future, it'll all be gone. I know. So why should I? Why should I sacrifice everything for you? Andy was quiet for a long moment. You shouldn't. I have no right to ask. But Jackie deserves someone who will fight for him even when it's costly. Even when it's unfair. Even when the person asking doesn't deserve the help. He paused. That's what love looks like, isn't it? What you taught me. Love that doesn't count the cost. Something broke open in Zariah's chest. She thought about Jackie's smile when he saw her. His small hand in hers. His voice saying Zariah Yilma with trust she hadn't earned except by showing up. 8 years helping Children's Society wanted to ignore. 4 years of that expertise dying and used while she carried plates. Who she'd been before the world tried to erase her. Who she could choose to be despite everything it had cost. 3 days, she finally said. The hearing's in 3 days. Yes. Then I need 2 days to prepare. I need every document about my credentials. About Seoul Special Needs Alliance. About what your organization did to it. I need proof of everything. Andy nodded slowly. You'll do it. I'll testify. Not for you. For Jackie. For every child whose programs your empire destroyed. For 8 years I spent believing education could change the world. She grabbed her coat. And when this is over. When the judge rules and the media moves on to the next scandal. You're going to fund a new program. You're going to restore what you destroyed. That's the cost. Done. I'm not finished. You're also going to testify. You're going to stand in that courtroom and admit what your organization did. Admit that you destroyed the very services your son needed. Admit that your empire has costs. And one of those costs was my life's work and 200 children's support systems. That'll destroy my custody case. Maybe. Or maybe it'll show you're capable of taking responsibility. Of choosing truth over image. She met his eyes. You said you wanted to change. Prove it. Andy Park had spent 20 years building an empire on violence and control. Who'd survived by never showing weakness? Who'd learned from his father that surrender meant death? He nodded. Okay, he said simply. I'll tell the truth. Zaraya walked out into Seoul's winter afternoon. Paparazzi cameras would be waiting at her apartment. Death threats would keep coming. Immigration authorities would keep questioning her status. And in 3 days, she'd walk into a courtroom and voluntarily destroy any chance she had of rebuilding her life quietly. But Jackie would have his voice heard. The truth would be spoken. And maybe, just maybe, something new could grow from the ashes of what had been destroyed. Sometimes the most terrifying thing we can do is choose to be seen. To step out of survival mode and into the full light of truth, knowing it might burn us. But trusting that some things are worth the fire. Zaraya had been erased once. This time she would make sure everyone remembered her name. Seoul Family Court looks like a fortress under siege. International media crews line the steps 3 deep, satellite trucks blocking traffic while reporters elbow for position. Inside, the courtroom is packed beyond capacity, bodies shoulder to shoulder in the gallery, cameras at every legal angle, air thick with the electricity that comes from watching powerful people bleed in public. Min Young arrives like royalty returning from exile. Her designer hanbok is a masterpiece of calculated messaging, traditional yet modern, soft pink silk embroidered with cranes, symbols of maternal devotion and longevity. Hair swept into an elegant chignon, makeup subtle and perfect. She looks exactly like what she's selling, the concerned Korean mother forced to rescue her son from a criminal father and foreign corruption. The cameras love her. She pauses on the courthouse steps just long enough for the perfect photo, her expression artfully mixing sorrow with steely determination. At the defendant's table, Andy sits in a dark suit that costs more than most people's monthly salary, but he can't hide what he is. Tattoos creep above his collar despite his lawyer's desperate instructions to cover them. Miho and another bodyguard occupy the front row behind him, their presence a reminder of the world he comes from. His hands are folded on the table, expression blank, but Zaraya, hidden among the crowd in back, can see the tension radiating through his shoulders. Judge Han Min-soo enters, a woman in her 60s with silver hair and the severe expression of someone who's seen every variation of human failure and isn't impressed. Min Young's attorney, Kwon Ji-hoon, rises. Sharp-featured, specializing in high-profile family cases, he knows exactly how to play to the cameras. Your Honor, this case is straightforward, Kwon begins, his voice carrying perfect prosecutorial authority. A mother seeks to protect her son from a father whose criminal lifestyle poses a clear and present danger. Mr. Park's organization is currently under investigation for money laundering, drug trafficking, and racketeering. His own son witnessed an attempted kidnapping that resulted in 3 men being hospitalized by Mr. Park's violent response. He pauses, letting the image settle like blood in water. But perhaps most concerning is Mr. Park's inappropriate relationship with a foreign service worker whom he has positioned as a surrogate mother figure. A woman with no legal standing, no verified credentials, whose immigration status is currently under review. The word foreign lands exactly as he intended, a dog whistle wrapped in legal language. Zariah feels the stares turn toward her, transforming her from person to symbol, the Black Waitress, the opportunist, the threat. Kwon presents his evidence with surgical precision. Photos from the kidnapping aftermath, Jackie's terrified face, blood on pavement, armed men. Testimony from Jackie's previous specialists describing an unstable home environment. Financial records showing Andy's criminal associations, money flowing through shell companies like poison through veins. Then Min Young takes the stand. She's perfect. A flawless balance of regret and maternal concern. Yes, she'd left the marriage, but only because Park's lifestyle made it impossible to provide a safe environment for Jackie. Yes, she'd been overwhelmed by the diagnosis initially, what mother wouldn't be? But she'd spent 2 years in LA getting therapy, preparing herself to be the mother Jackie deserved. She'd built a stable life, a safe home far from Seoul's criminal underworld. Tears appear at exactly the right moments. Her voice breaks describing how she'd failed Jackie by leaving, but couldn't fail him again by letting him remain in danger. The performance is flawless. Even knowing it's a performance, Zariah feels its power. Min Young isn't wrong about Andy's world being dangerous. She's just wrong about caring enough to face those risks instead of running. The court calls Zariah Mitchell to the stand. Zariah walks through the courtroom with her head high, past cameras and whispers, judgment pressing against her like physical weight. She'd chosen a simple black dress, professional but not expensive. Natural hair pulled back. She decided that morning not to play the part they wanted. Neither grateful servant nor seductive interloper. She would just be herself. Kwon's examination begins gently, name, current employment, how long she's known the Park family. Then the blade comes out. Ms. Mitchell, you work as a waitress at Hanol restaurant. Correct? Yes. And Mr. Park began requesting your service specifically how many months ago? 3 months. During this time, you formed what you would describe as a close relationship with his son. I've helped Jackie. Yes. Helped him? Kwon's eyebrow arches. How? Are you a licensed childcare provider in Korea? No. Are you a licensed therapist? Occupational therapist? Any kind of medical professional? No. So you're an unlicensed foreign worker who has positioned herself as a surrogate mother figure to a vulnerable child. He lets that hang in the air like smoke. Tell me, Ms. Mitchell, what is your immigration status? Park Sun-hye, Andy's lawyer, objects. Relevance. Judge Han considers. I'll allow it. I'm here on a work visa sponsored by my employer, Zariah says clearly. The restaurant where you serve tables. Kwon makes it sound like a crime. Before that, what did you do? I had various positions. Various positions. Interesting. He pulls up documents on the screen. According to immigration records, you've been in Korea for 12 years, but your current visa is only 4 years old. What happened to your previous visa? My previous employment ended. I had to find new sponsorship. Your previous employment at Seoul Special Needs Alliance, which was shut down due to fraud investigations. He lets the word fraud echo through the courtroom. Were you involved in that fraud, Ms. Mitchell? No. The investigation cleared all staff members. But you lost your position. Lost your visa status. wet from directing programs to serving tables. He moves closer. That must have been difficult. Humiliating even. And then you meet Mr. Park. Wealthy single father. Clearly desperate for help with his son. Tell me, Ms. Mitchell, did you target him specifically? See an opportunity? Andy starts to rise from his seat, but Park Sun-hye grabs his arm, whispering urgently. I didn't target anyone, Zaraya says. I was assigned to their table. And yet you formed an unusually close bond very quickly. The child calls you mother in Korean. You've been photographed with the family in ways suggesting intimacy beyond professional service. His voice drops, insinuating. Isn't it true that you saw a vulnerable single father with money and inserted yourself into his life? That your so-called help with Jackie was simply a way to secure financial security for yourself? The courtroom goes silent, waiting for her to break or defend or cry. Zaraya looks at Kwon, the man who'd reduced her expertise and love to gold digging, who'd weaponized her race, her poverty, her immigration status into proof of criminal intent. She looks at Min Young, sitting primly in her designer hanbok, playing the mother she'd never been. She looks at Andy, hands clenched on the table, eyes holding an apology that couldn't undo the questions she's enduring. Then she looks at Judge Han and begins to speak. My name is Zaraya Mitchell, she says, her voice clear and strong, carrying to every corner of the courtroom. I have a master's degree in special education from Seoul National University and completed PhD coursework at Columbia University. For 8 years, I served as director of Seoul Special Needs Alliance, where I helped over 200 children with autism, ADHD, and developmental delays learn to communicate, thrive, and believe they belonged in this world. The courtroom goes absolutely silent. Kwon's expression flickers, confusion, comprehension, barely concealed panic. I didn't lose my position because of incompetence or fraud, Zaraya continues, her voice steady and inexorable. I lost it because the organization that destroyed our funding was Park Enterprises. Mr. Park's money laundering operation used our charity as a front. And when authorities investigated, everything collapsed. 200 children lost their services overnight. Families who depended on our programs were left with nothing. I lost my career, my visa status, my life's work. She turns to look directly at Andy, holding his gaze. His criminal empire eliminated the very services his son desperately needed. While I was developing programs that could have helped Jackie thrive, Mr. Park was signing papers that would destroy those programs. The irony is perfect and devastating. Then she turns to Min Young, her voice taking on an edge sharp enough to cut. You want to know why Jackie calls me Zaraya Yilma? Because I'm the first person in his life who saw him as whole, not broken. Not because I was paid, I make minimum wage serving tables. Not because I was obligated, I have no legal connection to your family. Not because it made me look good, as this hearing proves, it's done the opposite. But because that's what love looks like when it's real. Even when the world tries to erase both of you. Her voice rises, controlled power flowing through every word. You abandoned your son when he needed you most because he wasn't convenient to your image. Because a child with autism didn't fit the perfect life you wanted to project. And Mr. Park built an empire of violence while destroying the very systems that could have helped Jackie communicate, connect, and feel safe in this world. I'm not perfect. I'm not a savior. I'm just someone who refused to stop seeing him. Refused to look away from a child who needed someone to speak his language. The courtroom erupts. Reporters scramble. Cameras flash. Judge Han pounds her gavel for order. Min Young's composure shatters completely, the perfect maternal mask cracking to reveal fury and humiliation beneath. Kwon objects, his strategy in ruins, his voice lost in the chaos. And Andy Park, who'd survived 20 years in Seoul's criminal underworld through violence and control, who'd built an empire on other men's fear, who'd learned from his father that tears were weakness and emotion was death. Andy's tears streamed down his face. Visible to everyone. To cameras and reporters and judge and jury of public opinion. His shoulders shake with the weight of everything he'd destroyed trying to build safety, everything he'd lost while thinking he was gaining power. Zariah steps down from the witness stand, walking back to her seat through the chaos. She carries herself with the dignity of someone who'd finally refused to be invisible, who'd destroyed any chance of rebuilding her life quietly, who'd exposed herself to judgment, deportation, public scrutiny. She'd voluntarily given up every protection silence provided. But the truth was spoken. Jackie's voice was heard. Judge Han finally restores order, her gavel cracking like gunfire. The courtroom settles into tense silence. She looks from Min Young to Andy to Zariah, her expression unreadable. "This court will recess for deliberation," she says. "Both parties will remain available for the ruling, which will be delivered tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. As the courtroom empties, Zariah feels her phone buzz. A text from an unknown number. "You just made yourself a target." He doesn't forgive people who expose him. "Get out of Korea while you still can." She looks up to find Miho staring at her from across the room, his expression a mixture of warning and something that might be respect. Behind him, Andy is surrounded by his lawyers, but his eyes find hers through the crowd. And in that moment, Zariah realizes the truth she'd spoken hadn't just shattered Min Young's case or Andy's armor. It had painted a target on her back that money and love combined might not be able to erase. And sometimes that's all love can do. Speak truth even when it costs everything. And trust that something true is worth more than something safe, even when safety might be the only thing standing between you and destruction. Judge Han's ruling comes swift and conditional, delivered in the flat tone of someone who'd heard enough drama. Jackie will remain with Andy Park. But the requirements are strict and non-negotiable. Comprehensive family therapy with a licensed specialist. Verified legitimate income sources documented quarterly. Professional support plan reviewed by the court every 6 months. Regular monitoring by child services. Any violence, any criminal charges, any indication of unstable environment would mean immediate custody transfer. Andy had one. But on the thinnest of margins. Victory wrapped in so many conditions it felt more like probation than parenthood. Outside, January's soul bites down hard. The sky is that particular winter gray that turns the whole city monochrome. Cold slices through expensive coats like paper. Andy's bodyguards form a human wall against the media crush, reporters shouting questions in Korean and English, cameras flashing like small explosions, the feeding frenzy that comes from watching powerful people bleed in public. Andy finds Zariah sitting alone on a bench to the side of the courthouse. Away from the chaos but not hidden from it. She looks exhausted in a way that goes deeper than physical tiredness, the kind of exhaustion that comes from stripping yourself bare in front of strangers, knowing they've seen every scar, every wound, every protected part. Her hands shake slightly. Cold or adrenaline crash, he couldn't tell. He sits beside her. Miho signals the other guards to give them space, forming a protective perimeter at a respectful distance. A moment of silence, just sitting while Seoul moves around them, indifferent to their small drama. "You were right about everything," Andy says, his voice rough from the tears he'd cried in court, from armor that cracked so completely it might never fully rebuild. "I destroyed your life building mine. Made my son's world smaller trying to make mine bigger. Chose violence because I thought it meant strength. Thought control meant protection." He pauses, staring at his hands, tattooed, scarred, hands that built an empire and broken bones and signed papers destroying programs without reading what they were for. "I don't know if I can become the man Jackie needs. Don't know if I can leave this life I've built my identity on. My organization. My empire. It's not just what I do. It's who I've been for 20 years. But I want to try. For him. Maybe, his voice drops, maybe for the first time, for me too. Zariah studies him, the man whose organization destroyed her work, who'd learned gentleness for his son despite every trained instinct, who just cried in public for the first time in decades. Your apology doesn't give me back 8 years, she says. Doesn't bring back those 200 children who lost their services. Doesn't undo the violence you've built your empire on. The lives your organization has damaged or destroyed. But it's a start. The wind picks up, carrying the smell of snow that hasn't fallen yet. Andy pulls an envelope from his jacket, official-looking, thick with documents. Director of the Park Foundation for Neurodevelopmental Support, he says. Funded by the legitimate portions of my fortune, and I'll work to make more of it legitimate. Full autonomy. Unlimited resources. Your vision. Your leadership. Your staff. Your programs. Your decisions. You build what I destroyed. Zariah takes the envelope, doesn't open it, fingers tracing the edges. Why? Guilt? Partly. Mostly because you were right in that courtroom. I can't undo what I did. Can't bring back the 8 years you lost or restore those programs I destroyed. But maybe I can stop being the problem and start being part of the answer. Because Jackie isn't the only child like him. And you're not the only person who had their life's work destroyed by people like me. He meets her eyes. I'm not asking you to forgive me. I'm asking you to let me help fix what I broke. Even if I can never fully repair it. Zariah is quiet for a long time, watching the city move around them, watching her breath cloud in the cold air. I'll take it, she finally says. But not because you're sorry. Because those children still need advocates. And I spent 4 years watching my expertise die unused while I carried plates for people who never saw me. She opens the envelope, scanning the documents. Incorporation papers. Bank statements. Building leases. Real. Substantial. But you need to understand something. This doesn't make us even. Doesn't erase what your empire did. It's just you choosing to stop causing harm and start causing something else. I understand. That evening, 48 floors above the streets, in Andy's penthouse with glass walls showing the city sprawling below, a living map of all the lives moving through it, unaware of the small revolution happening in this space, Jackie is waiting. When he sees Zariah, he runs. Actually runs, something he rarely does. Wraps his arms around her waist. Zariah Yoma, you came back, he says, his voice stronger than 3 months ago, his body less rigid, his eyes making contact for longer moments. Zariah kneels to meet him at eye level, hands gentle on his shoulders. I came back. I'll always come back. The next hour, Zariah teaches Andy in his private space. Techniques she developed over 8 years. How to hum gently when Jackie feels overwhelmed, matching the rhythm to his rocking instead of stopping it. How to approach patiently from the side, entering peripheral vision before direct line of sight. How to see his patterns as language, not chaos. The way he arranges toys in specific configurations. Traces invisible shapes on surfaces. Needs things in particular orders that make sense to him even if they look random to everyone else. At dinner, Jackie eats from both their hands, relaxed and trusting in a way that would have seemed impossible 3 months ago. Andy watches his son with an expression caught between wonder and grief for all the time he'd lost to not knowing how to reach him, wonder that it was possible at all. After Jackie is settled with his favorite tablet, headphones on, absorbed in patterns only he can see, Andy removes his jacket and rolls up his sleeves. Tattoos cover both arms completely, dragons and tigers in traditional Korean style. Symbols of power and protection marking him as belonging to a world that solved problems through violence. beautiful in their way, intricate and meaningful. But also a uniform he could never fully remove. He kneels beside his son at eye level, the way Zariah taught him. For the first time in 2 decades, tears fall freely down his face. Not the breaking that happened in the courtroom, but something quieter, more private. Grief and gratitude mixing until they couldn't be separated. "You didn't just give me my son back," he says, looking up at Zariah. "You showed me who I could choose to become." Zariah's hand finds his across the table where Jackie's dinner plate sits empty for the first time in weeks. "No. You finally chose to stop hiding behind the armor. That's all you. I just showed you what was already there, waiting." She pauses, her grip tightening. Now comes the hard part. Choosing it every day. When your organization questions your weakness. When rivals test you. When being gentle feels like dying because violence is all you've known. You have to choose this version of yourself over and over. Will you help me with that? I'll help Jackie. I'll build the programs you're funding. I'll teach other parents what I taught you. But the choosing, that's yours alone. I can't do it for you. They sit together while the city lights flicker on below them. While Jackie hums softly to himself in his own world that's slowly, carefully opening to include them. 2 people learning what it meant to build something instead of destroying it. To choose vulnerability instead of armor. To believe that maybe, just maybe, love was stronger than fear when you gave it room to breathe. Andy's phone buzzes. He glances at the screen and his face goes white. "What is it?" Zariah asks. He shows her the message. No number. Just text, "Heard you cried in court today. Heard you're going soft. The families are concerned. Meeting tomorrow. 10 a.m. Gangnam Warehouse. Don't be late." Below the words, a photo. Jackie's school. Taken this morning. They know where he goes, Andy whispers, and Zariah sees the man who built an empire on violence warring with the father who just learned to be gentle. "They're telling me to choose. The organization or my son." Outside, Seoul moved through its evening rhythms, indifferent to the small miracle happening 48 floors above its streets. But inside that apartment, in the space between what had been destroyed and what could be built from the ruins, redemption wasn't just beginning. It was about to be tested in blood. 6 months later. The Park Foundation for Neurodevelopmental Support opens its doors in a renovated building in Gangnam, 3 blocks from where Seoul Special Needs Alliance once stood. The architecture is modern, all glass and light and open spaces. Complete opposite of Andy's criminal empire aesthetic of shadows and closed doors. The entrance is accessible. Classrooms bright. Every surface chosen for comfort rather than intimidation. It looks like hope made physical. Like someone had taken 8 years of destroyed dreams and rebuilt them with better materials. Zariah's main classroom is surrounded by 20 children ranging from 5 to 14 years old. Korean kids, international kids, mixed-race kids belonging to multiple worlds or none. All neurodivergent. All thriving in ways their previous schools said was impossible. Laughter fills the space like music, bouncing off walls painted in soft colors that don't assault sensitive eyes. Her team consists of 5 former Seoul Special Needs Alliance staff members she'd tracked down and reunited. Ji-won is now senior therapist. Others who'd lost their careers the same day Zariah did, who spent years having their expertise ignored because one investigation tainted them all. On Tuesday afternoon, Zariah hears them arrive before she sees them. Jackie's voice calling out greetings to children he'd come to know. Andy's deeper tones responding to staff who'd learned he was more than the headlines suggested. No bodyguards inside the building, Zariah's non-negotiable condition. To wait respectfully in the car outside. Inside the foundation, violence stays at the door. Jackie runs to join a group working on an art project. His movements are more fluid now, less rigid with anxiety. He's made friends here, other children who understand what it means to experience the world differently. Who don't judge his patterns or need for specific routines. He belongs here in a way he'd never belonged anywhere else. Andy stands in the doorway watching his son. Zariah notices the changes in him too. He's stepped back from most criminal operations over the past 6 months, working with authorities on a careful, protected exit strategy. Dangerous but necessary. Building legitimate businesses, cleaning money in reverse. Trying to untangle 20 years of empire from the underworld's grip. The process is slow, costly. Some nights he comes to the foundation looking like he'd aged a decade. But he keeps coming. Keeps choosing. He did really well in group therapy this morning, Zariah tells him as they walk to her office. Participated in the conversation circle without prompting. Even made eye contact with 2 other kids. That's good, Andy says, his voice carrying exhaustion but also something else, satisfaction, maybe, or the beginning of peace. That's really good. Her office is a small space with windows overlooking the street. A plaque hangs on the wall in Korean and English, in memory of all the children we forgot to see, and in honor of those who saw them anyway. May we all learn to choose seeing? Below it, in a simple frame, Zariah's first legitimate paycheck in 4 years. The memo line in Andy's handwriting reads, "For services rendered with profound gratitude, and for teaching me what strength really means." She'd kept it as a reminder. Not of his redemption, which is ongoing and incomplete, but of her own journey. Director to waitress to director again. The fact that expertise doesn't disappear just because the world stops valuing it. The stubborn truth that some people refuse to be erased, no matter how hard systems work to make them invisible. "How are things?" she asks, pouring them both tea. Andy sits heavily. "Hard. My second-in-command is pushing back against the exit strategy. Says I'm making the organization vulnerable to takeover, which is true. 2 of my legitimate businesses are struggling because I don't actually know how to run companies without using them as fronts." He rubs his face. "And Min Young is filing appeals. Still claiming I'm unfit. That the foundation is just another criminal front with better publicity. Is she right about that last part?" Andy meets her eyes. "No. This is the only thing I've built in 20 years that isn't about control or violence or profit. It's about Jackie. And about every other child like him who needs someone to learn their language." Zariah sips her tea, studying him. Tired but present in a way he hadn't been 6 months ago. The armor isn't fully down, probably never would be, given the world he still partially inhabits, but it's thinner now, more flexible. "You hummed to him yesterday when he was getting overwhelmed before the session started," she says. "I saw you humming Bandal in that minor key, matching his rocking. You did it without thinking about it." Andy nods slowly. "It's becoming automatic. Like violence used to be. That's growth. That's you choosing a different automatic response. But you know this isn't over, right? The exit strategy. The legitimization. The transformation. It's a process that might take years. And some parts of what you've done can never be undone." "I know," Andy says quietly. "I'm not looking for redemption. Just different direction. A way to be Jackie's father that doesn't require him to live in the world I built from violence." Through the window, they can see Jackie playing with other children. His laughter mixing with theirs in a sound that 6 months ago would have seemed impossible. Real transformation, Zariah had learned, didn't live in grand gestures or dramatic revelations. It lived in smaller moments repeated daily, building into something larger than their individual components. As the afternoon ends, parents arrive to collect their children. Zariah watches Andy kneel beside Jackie at eye level. The boy shows him a drawing, 3 figures holding hands under a sky filled with both stars and Korean characters spelling out, stars. Zariah Yilma. Appa. Jackie says, his voice clear and strong, pointing to each figure. Yuri Gajak. Our family. Andy's hands, tattooed, scarred, hands that had dealt violence for 20 years, are gentle as they hold the drawing. Patient as they trace the shapes Jackie made. Present in a way that requires him to surrender the control that once defined him. Yuri Gajak, he says softly. Our family. Zariah smiles from across the room. Surrounded by children who would never be invisible again. By staff who'd had their expertise restored. By programs rebuilt with better foundations than before. She'd learned something profound in the journey from director to waitress to director again. Sometimes the person you fear most is the one holding the mirror to everything you've been running from. Sometimes the most dangerous man in the city is also the most lost. Sometimes love means choosing to see someone truly, even when they've given you every reason to look away. She hadn't been hired to change their lives. Hadn't planned to save anyone. She'd just refused to look away from either of them, the child everyone said was broken and the man everyone said was beyond redemption. In that refusal, in that stubborn insistence on seeing truly despite everything it cost her, she'd saved more than one gangster's son. She'd held up a mirror to a man's soul and shown him he could choose differently. Late afternoon light filters through the tall windows, painting everything in shades of gold and amber. The city sprawls below, a world they're slowly changing, one child at a time, one choice at a time, one moment of refusing to look away at a time. Jackie hands the drawing to his father. Andy carefully folds it, tucks it into his jacket pocket right over his heart, where tattoos mark him as belonging to a world he's learning to leave behind. Can we come back tomorrow? Jackie asks. Thursday, Andy says gently. We come on Tuesdays and Thursdays, remember? Thursday, Jackie repeats, testing the word, accepting the boundary. Learning that structure doesn't have to mean control. That limits can feel safe instead of suffocating. They leave together, Andy's hand on Jackie's shoulder, Jackie's hand reaching up to hold his father's. Trust earned through consistency, gentleness, the daily choice to be vulnerable. Zariah watches them go, then turns back to the classroom. Where tomorrow 20 children will return. Where next week 30 more will join from the waiting list. Where the work of restoration continues one patient moment at a time. Sometimes the person you fear is the one holding the mirror to everything you've been running from. And sometimes, if you're brave enough to look in that mirror instead of breaking it, you find not just what you've destroyed, but what you could become. Not redemption. Redemption is too simple a word for the complicated work of transformation. Just direction. Just choice. Just the daily practice of becoming someone new while carrying everything you've been. The foundation's lights stay on late into the evening, warm against Seoul's winter darkness. A beacon for all the overlooked children and their desperate parents. For all the people who'd been told their children were broken when they were just speaking a language the world hadn't learned yet. And inside, surrounded by laughter and learning and the stubborn hope that comes from refusing to be erased, Zariah Mitchell, waitress, director, survivor, teacher, continues the work of building what love looks like when it's real.